The arrow punched through Nathaniel Grayson's shoulder just as he stumbled over the fallen log, and the force of it sent him crashing face first into the muddy creek bed. He heard voices behind him, harsh, excited voices shouting in the common tongue about dragging his corpse back to collect the bounty. His vision swam as he tried to push himself up, but his arms gave out beneath him, and the cold water rushed over his face. This was it then. 3 years running from a crime he did not commit, and it would end here in some nameless stretch of wilderness, drowning in 6 inches of water while bandits picked his bones clean. But then strong hands gripped him under the arms and hauled him upright with shocking ease. Nathaniel gasped and sputtered, trying to focus through the pain and the dizziness. He found himself staring up into a face he had been taught since childhood to fear. Green skin, small tusks jutting from a strong jaw, pointed ears. Eyes the color of amber that studied him with an expression caught between caution and something that might have been compassion. "Do not speak," the orc woman said quietly. Her voice was deeper than a human woman's but clear and measured. "They are close." She was taller than him by half a head, broad-shouldered and muscular in the way of her people, dressed in simple homespun clothing that marked her as a farmer or homesteader rather than a warrior. She lifted him as though he weighed nothing at all and began moving through the forest with sure-footed silence. Nathaniel's shoulder screamed with every jostle, but he bit down on his lip to keep from crying out. Behind them, he could hear the bandits thrashing through the undergrowth, their voices growing more distant as his rescuer carried him deeper into the woods. They traveled for what felt like hours but might have been only minutes. Nathaniel drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the steady rhythm of her footsteps and the warmth of her arms holding him secure. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on a rough wooden floor inside a small cabin. The orc woman knelt beside him, her face set in concentration as she examined the arrow still protruding from his shoulder. "This will hurt," she warned, and before he could brace himself, she snapped off the fletched end of the arrow with one quick motion. Nathaniel tried to scream, but she pressed something soft against his mouth, a wadded cloth that muffled the sound. "Bite down," she instructed, then pushed the remainder of the arrow through and out the other side of his shoulder in one smooth movement. The world went white with agony. When it resolved back into shapes and colors, he found her pressing clean linen against both sides of the wound, applying firm pressure. She worked with practiced efficiency, her face betraying nothing of what she might be thinking. After a few minutes, she began wrapping his shoulder with long strips of cloth, binding the wounds tight. "You will live," she said at last, sitting back on her heels. "If infection does not set in, if you have no fever by tomorrow night, you should recover fully." Nathaniel tried to speak, but his mouth felt full of cotton. She seemed to understand because she fetched a cup of water and helped him drink. The cool liquid cleared his throat enough for him to rasp out a question. "Why?" She stood and moved to the hearth, where a pot of something that smelled like venison stew hung over a low fire. "Why what? Why help me? Your people and mine are not exactly friendly. My people and your people kill each other over land and old grudges," she agreed, stirring the pot. "But you are hurt and they were hunting you like an animal. I do not need a reason beyond that to offer aid." She ladled stew into a wooden bowl and brought it to him. "Can you sit?" With her help, he managed to prop himself against the wall. She fed him carefully, a spoonful at a time, waiting patiently between each bite. The stew was rich and well seasoned, better than anything he had eaten in months of running. When the bowl was empty, she took it away and returned with a thin blanket that she draped over him. "Sleep now," she said. "I will keep watch." "What is your name?" he asked, already feeling himself sliding toward unconsciousness. She hesitated before answering. "Zara, Zara Oakenshield." "Nathaniel," he managed to say. "Nathaniel Grayson. Thank you, Zara." He thought he saw her expression soften slightly, but then sleep claimed him, and he knew nothing more. When he woke, gray morning light was filtering through the cabin's single small window. His shoulder throbbed with a dull ache, but the sharp agony had faded to something more manageable. He turned his head carefully and saw Zara sitting near the door, a long hunting knife across her lap, her eyes fixed on the woods beyond. She had not slept, he realized. She had kept watch all night. "They are gone," she said without looking at him. "I heard them give up the search near midnight. They went back the way they came." Nathaniel tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Zara was at his side in an instant, helping him into a more comfortable position against the wall. "Easy," she cautioned. "You lost much blood. Do not rush." "I need to keep moving," he protested weakly. "They will come back, or others will come. There is a bounty on my head." "What did you do?" The question was direct, without judgment. "Nothing," Nathaniel said bitterly. "I was a soldier in the border wars. When my company was ambushed and slaughtered, I was the only survivor. My commander blamed me for the losses, said I was a coward who ran while my brothers died. It is easier to have a scapegoat than to admit to poor planning." He laughed without humor. "So now I am wanted for desertion and cowardice, with a price of 50 gold crowns on my head. Enough to make every sellsword and bounty hunter in 3 kingdoms eager to bring me in." Zara studied him for a long moment. "You do not seem like a coward to me. A coward would have given up in that creek." "I had help," he pointed out. "You fought to stay conscious when the pain should have made you faint. You did not cry out when I pushed the arrow through, though I know it hurt worse than anything you have felt." She rose and moved back to the hearth. "A coward could not have done those things." Something warm uncurled in Nathaniel's chest at her words. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to him with anything other than suspicion or greed. "Why are you out here alone? I thought orcs lived in clans." Her back stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Not all of us. Some are cast out." "What did you do?" He threw her own question back at her. She was quiet for so long he thought she would not answer. Then she said, "I refused to kill a human child who wandered into our territory. My chieftain said I was weak, that I had forgotten what humans did to our people during the wars. He gave me a choice: execute the child to prove my loyalty or leave the clan forever." Her hands gripped the edge of the hearth. "So I took the child back to the nearest human settlement and left that same night. That was 2 years ago." "You gave up your home for a stranger's child," Nathaniel said softly. "I gave up a home where mercy was seen as weakness," Zara corrected. "I have no regrets about that." They fell into silence, but it was not uncomfortable. Outside, birds began their morning songs, and somewhere in the distance a woodpecker hammered against a tree. Nathaniel found himself studying his rescuer more carefully in the growing light. She was younger than he had first thought, probably close to his own age of 24. Her hair was black and thick, pulled back in a practical braid. Her clothing was worn but clean, patched in places but well made. Everything about her spoke of someone who had learned to survive alone, to be self-sufficient and resourceful. Over the next 3 days, Nathaniel's strength slowly returned. Zara tended his wound with careful attention, changing the dressings twice daily and watching closely for any signs of infection. She fed him broth and stew, gradually increasing the portions as his appetite returned. And she kept her distance, never touching him more than necessary, always maintaining a careful space between them. On the 4th day, he was able to stand and walk a few steps without assistance. Zara watched from her place by the hearth, her expression unreadable. You should be able to travel in another few days, she said. There is a town about 20 miles west of here, across the border into Valmer. They do not honor bounties from Kelthara there. You would be safer. You have thought about this, Nathaniel observed. I have had time to think. You cannot stay here forever, and I cannot protect you if real hunters come. He nodded slowly, trying to ignore the strange sense of loss that settled in his stomach. Of course, he could not stay. This was not his home. Zara had saved his life out of kindness, but that did not mean she wanted him as a permanent fixture in her solitary existence. I will leave you some of my supplies, he said. It is the least I can do to repay your help. You owe me nothing, Zara said firmly. I did what any decent person would do. Most people would not have helped an orc in my situation, Nathaniel pointed out. I think that makes you better than decent. He thought he saw color rise in her green cheeks, but she turned away before he could be certain. That evening, she brought down a rabbit with her bow and showed him how she prepared it, skinning and cleaning it with practiced efficiency. They cooked it over the fire together, and for the first time since he had arrived, Zara seemed to relax slightly. She even smiled once when he told her a story about his childhood on his father's farm, about the time he had tried to teach the pig to fetch like a dog. You were a farmer's son, she asked, surprised, until the war came and they needed soldiers. My father thought military service would make a man of me. Nathaniel poked at the fire with a stick. He died while I was away. Raiders hit the farm. My mother died of fever the following winter. When I deserted, I thought about going back to see if anything remained, but the farm is deep in Kelthara. I would be caught before I got within 10 miles of it. I am sorry, Zara said quietly, to lose your family and your home in such a way that is a heavy burden. We all carry burdens, Nathaniel replied, looking at her. Yours seems no lighter than mine. She met his eyes for a long moment, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or recognition. They were both people who had been cast out by their own kind, marked as traitors or cowards for following their consciences instead of orders. The next morning, Nathaniel woke to find Zara already up and moving around the cabin with unusual energy. She had packed a large canvas bag with supplies: dried meat, flatbread, a waterskin, and various other necessities. "What are you doing?" he asked, sitting up carefully. "Coming with you," she said simply. "To Valmer. You are not strong enough yet to defend yourself if you run into trouble, and the forest between here and the border is not safe for lone travelers. Zara, you do not have to do that. You have done more than enough already." She slung the bag over her shoulder and fixed him with a steady look. "I know I do not have to. I want to, unless you would prefer to travel alone." The truth was that the thought of leaving her filled him with a strange reluctance he did not want to examine too closely. "I would be grateful for the company," he admitted. They set out within the hour, Zara leading the way along narrow game trails that wound through the dense forest. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew this land intimately, pointing out edible plants and warning him away from patches of slick moss on the rocks. Nathaniel followed, doing his best to keep up despite the lingering weakness in his legs. By midday, his shoulder was aching fiercely, and he was breathing hard. Zara called a halt near a small stream, helping him sit against a tree before unpacking some of their supplies. "We will rest here for a while," she said, handing him the waterskin. "There is no need to push yourself until you collapse." "I am slowing you down," Nathaniel said between gulps of cool water. "We are not racing anyone." Zara sat down across from him, pulling out a piece of jerky to chew. "Better to move carefully than to rush and reopen your wounds." They ate in companionable silence, listening to the burble of the stream and the rustle of leaves overhead. A deer appeared on the opposite bank, drinking delicately before bounding away when it caught their scent. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, and for a moment, Nathaniel could almost forget he was a fugitive with nowhere to go. "What will you do in Valmer?" Zara asked eventually. "Find work, I suppose." "I know farming and I have some skill with weapons, even if I never want to be a soldier again. Someone might be willing to hire an extra hand." He looked at her. "What about you? Will you go back to your cabin?" She shook her head slowly. "I do not think so. It has been my home for 2 years, but it is also lonely. I thought I preferred solitude to the judgment of others, but perhaps I was wrong." She picked at the bark of a fallen log. "Perhaps it is time to try something new." "You could stay in Valmer too," Nathaniel suggested carefully. "If you wanted to, I mean, not with me necessarily, but in the town. There must be work for someone with your skills." Zara's amber eyes studied him intently. "Would you want me to stay, in the town, I mean?" His heart began to beat faster. "Yes," he said honestly. "I would like that very much." A slow smile spread across her face, softening the sharp angles of her features. "Then perhaps I will consider it." They traveled for 4 more days, moving slowly to accommodate Nathaniel's healing shoulder. Each night they made camp in some sheltered spot, and each night they sat by the fire and talked until the stars wheeled overhead. Nathaniel told her about his childhood, about learning to plow and plant alongside his father, about his mother's songs and his sister who had married a merchant and moved to the capital before the war. Zara spoke less about her past, but she shared small pieces memories of learning to hunt with her mother, of the taste of bloodfruit wine at clan gatherings, of the stories the elders told about the ancient days before humans and orcs were enemies. On the 5th night, they camped in a small clearing where someone had built a rough fire ring years before. The night was clear and cold, and they sat close to the flames for warmth. Nathaniel was acutely aware of Zara's presence beside him, the solid strength of her and the way the firelight played across her green skin. "Nathaniel," she said suddenly, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you look at me, what do you see?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. When you look at me, do you see an orc, a monster, something to be feared?" Her voice was carefully neutral, but he could hear the tension beneath it. He thought about it seriously before answering. "When I first woke up in your cabin, I was afraid. Not because you had hurt me, but because of everything I had been taught. That orcs were savage, that they could not be trusted, that they existed only to take and destroy." He shifted to face her more fully. "But then I watched you care for a stranger who should have been your enemy. I watched you give up sleep to keep watch over someone who could easily have killed you while you rested. I listened to you talk about choosing exile over murdering a child, and I realized that everything I was taught was lies meant to make killing easier in wartime." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her hand where it rested on her knee. She did not move. "When I look at you now, I see Zara. I see someone brave and kind and strong. I see someone who lives according to her own sense of right and wrong, no matter the cost. I see someone I am honored to call a friend." He paused, his heart hammering. "And if I am being completely honest, I see someone I am beginning to care for as more than a friend." Zara's breath caught. In the firelight, her eyes seemed to glow. "You should not feel that way about me. Humans and orcs do not, we cannot what? Cannot feel compassion for each other, cannot respect each other, cannot care." Nathaniel's hand tightened slightly on hers. "I know what the world says about our people mixing. I know it is forbidden and taboo and a dozen other things. But I also know what I feel, and I am tired of living my life according to rules set by people who care nothing for truth or justice. If we were seen together, people would say terrible things. They might try to hurt you, to hurt both of us. Then we will be careful. We will find a place where we can simply be two people trying to live in peace." He lifted her hand and pressed it against his chest, over his heart. "I am not asking you to make any promises or decisions right now. I just wanted you to know the truth. You saved my life, Zara. But more than that, you reminded me that there is still goodness in this world, that not everyone is ruled by hate and fear. I think I am falling in love with you, and I do not want to hide that anymore." For a long moment, she simply stared at him. Then, very slowly, she lifted her free hand and cupped his cheek. Her palm was warm and rough with calluses. "I have been alone for so long," she whispered. "I told myself it was better that way, that wanting connection only led to pain. But then you stumbled into my life, bleeding and desperate, and something inside me woke up. These past days with you have been the happiest I can remember since I left my clan. I think I am falling in love with you too, Nathaniel Grayson, and it terrifies me." He turned his head and kissed her palm gently. "Then we can be terrified together." She laughed, a soft sound that was half sob, and then she was leaning in and he was meeting her halfway. Their lips touched carefully, almost tentatively, as though they were both afraid of breaking something precious. Zara's tusks pressed lightly against his face, and he felt her hand slide into his hair. The kiss deepened, and all the loneliness and fear of the past years seemed to melt away in the warmth of it. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. Zara rested her forehead against his, and he could feel her smiling. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We keep going," Nathaniel said. "We make it to Valmer. We find work and a place to live. We build a life together if you will have me, and we prove that love is stronger than the hatred that divides our peoples." "That is a large task," Zara pointed out, but her tone was warm. "Then it is good that I have you to help me with it." They held each other until the fire burned down to embers, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment. Eventually, practical concerns reasserted themselves, and they spread out their bedrolls side by side. Nathaniel lay awake for a long time, listening to Zara's steady breathing beside him and marveling at the strange paths that life could take. A week ago, he had been alone and hunted, certain his story would end badly. Now he had hope again, and more than that, he had someone to build a future with. They reached the border of Valmer on the afternoon of the 6th day. The crossing itself was unmarked except for a line of stones that someone had arranged years ago. On the Kelthira side, the forest was thick and dark. On the Valmer side, it opened up into rolling farmland dotted with small homesteads. "There," Zara said, pointing to a cluster of buildings in the distance. "That should be the town. Millbrook, I think it is called." As they walked down the road toward Millbrook, Nathaniel felt his nervousness growing. It was one thing to confess feelings in the private darkness of the forest. It was another entirely to walk openly into a human settlement with an orc woman at his side. He glanced at Zara and saw that her jaw was set, her shoulders squared. She was preparing herself for hostility. "We could say you are my guide," he suggested quietly. "That you helped me across the border for a fee. That way people would not assume, no." Zara's voice was firm. "I will not hide what I feel or pretend we are less than we are. If people cannot accept the truth, then they are not people I wish to know." He felt a surge of admiration for her courage. "You are right. Together then." "Together," she agreed. The town of Millbrook was larger than Nathaniel had expected, with perhaps 200 souls living in a mix of wooden buildings and stone cottages. As they walked down the main street, people stopped what they were doing to stare. Some faces showed mere curiosity. Others displayed open suspicion or fear. A mother pulled her child close as they passed, whispering something Nathaniel could not hear. They made their way to what looked like the town's only inn, a sturdy two-story building with a painted sign showing a water wheel. Inside, the common room was dim and smelled of beer and roasting meat. The conversations died away as they entered. The innkeeper, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, studied them from behind the bar. His expression was carefully neutral. "Help you folks." "We are looking for lodging," Nathaniel said, keeping his voice steady. "Just for a night or two while we get our bearings. We can pay." The innkeeper's eyes flicked from Nathaniel to Zara and back again. "We do not get many orcs in Millbrook." "I imagine you do not," Zara said calmly. "But I assure you, I will be a model guest. I do not bite furniture or terrorize other patrons." Despite himself, the innkeeper's mouth twitched into something that might have been the ghost of a smile. "I suppose I have had worse guests. 2 rooms or 1? 1, Nathaniel said firmly, and he felt Zara's hand find his. "That will be 5 copper a night, meals included. Pay in advance." Nathaniel counted out the coins, nearly the last of his money, and the innkeeper handed him an iron key. "Upstairs, last door on the right. Supper is at sunset. Try not to cause trouble." "That is our goal as well," Nathaniel assured him. Their room was small but clean, with a real bed instead of a bedroll and a basin for washing. Zara set down her pack and moved to the window, looking out over the town's main street. "That went better than I feared," she admitted. "The night is young," Nathaniel said, but he smiled to take the sting from the words. He came to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. She leaned into him, and for a moment they simply enjoyed the quiet intimacy of the gesture. That evening in the common room, they ate a simple but satisfying meal of roasted chicken and vegetables. A few of the other patrons continued to stare, but no one approached them or made trouble. One old man even nodded a greeting as he passed their table, which Nathaniel took as a minor victory. After dinner, they stepped outside into the cooling evening air. The main street was quieter now, with only a few people moving about on final errands before nightfall. Nathaniel led Zara toward the edge of town, where a small bridge crossed a burbling stream. "I used to dream about a moment like this," he said as they stood on the bridge, watching the water flow beneath them. "Not with an orc woman necessarily, but with someone who understood me, someone I could be honest with. I never thought I would actually find it." "We found each other," Zara corrected gently. "Both of us were lost and we stumbled into each other's paths." She turned to face him fully. "Nathaniel, I need you to understand something. The road ahead will not be easy. People will judge us. Some will hate us simply for existing together. There may come times when you regret this choice, when the burden of loving me becomes too heavy." He took both her hands in his. "Then we will carry that burden together. Zara, I have spent 3 years running from a false accusation, reviled by my own people for something I did not do. I know what it means to be hated for the wrong reasons, but I also know that running and hiding are no way to live. With you, I do not feel like I am running anymore. I feel like I am finally moving towards something instead of just away from danger." She raised one of his hands to her lips and kissed it softly. "Then let us move toward it together." Over the next several days, they settled into a routine in Millbrook. Nathaniel found work at a farm just outside of town, helping with the harvest. The farmer, a practical man named Thomas Hendricks, cared more about strong backs than politics, and he paid fair wages. Zara proved equally resourceful, hiring herself out as a hunter to several of the town's merchants. Her skill with a bow was undeniable, and fresh game was always in demand. Slowly, grudgingly, the people of Millbrook began to accept their presence. It helped that they kept to themselves and caused no trouble, that they paid their bills on time and treated everyone with respect. The innkeeper, whose name they learned was Marcus, even began to warm to them slightly. though he maintained his careful neutrality in public. One evening about 2 weeks after their arrival, Nathaniel returned from the fields to find Zara sitting on the bridge again, staring at the water with an expression of deep thought. "Something wrong?" he asked, settling beside her. "I have been thinking about the future," she said. "About what comes next for us. We cannot live in the inn forever. We need a real home, a place of our own." "I have been thinking the same thing," Nathaniel admitted. "Thomas mentioned that there is an abandoned homestead about 3 miles north of here. The previous owner died without heirs and the land reverted to the local lord. He would sell it cheap to anyone willing to work it." Zara's eyes lit up. "A homestead of our own. It would need work. Thomas said the house is still standing but needs repairs, and the fields have gone to weeds. But the land is good and there is a well and a small barn." He took her hand. "We could build a life there, Zara, together, properly." "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like that very much." The next day they went to see the land. Thomas had been right about it needing work. The house was weathered and missing shingles. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, and the fields were a tangle of wild growth. But the bones of it were sound, and Nathaniel could see the potential in it. "This could be home," he said, standing in the overgrown front yard with Zara beside him. "Our home." "Then let us make it so," she replied. They negotiated with Lord Pemberton, the local noble who held the deed, and struck a deal. In exchange for a modest sum and a percentage of their harvest for the first 3 years, the land would be theirs. Nathaniel paid with the last of his savings and the wages he had earned over the past weeks. The work of restoration began immediately. They spent their days clearing the fields, patching the roof, and making the house livable. Zara proved as capable with a hammer as she was with a bow, and Nathaniel's farming background served them well. Slowly, the homestead began to take shape. Thomas came by one afternoon to see their progress and nodded approvingly. "You two work well together. That is good. Farming is hard enough without fighting with your partner." "Zara is not just my partner," Nathaniel said, feeling bold. "She is my beloved. We are building this life together." Thomas regarded them both for a long moment. "People in town talk, you know, about you too. Some think it is wrong, unnatural even, but I see two hard-working people trying to make an honest living. That is more than I can say for some folk who were born human." He clapped Nathaniel on the shoulder. "You treat her right and do not let the gossips get under your skin. They will tire of it eventually." "Thank you," Nathaniel said, genuinely moved. "That means more than you know." As summer turned toward autumn, the homestead continued to take shape. They replanted a portion of the fields with winter wheat, repaired the barn, and made the house cozy with furniture they built themselves or bought cheaply in town. Zara painted the shutters green, which made Nathaniel laugh. "What?" she demanded, mock-offended. "I like green." "I love green," he assured her, pulling her into an embrace. "Especially this particular shade." One cool evening in late September, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over their fields, Nathaniel felt a sense of peace settle over him that he had not experienced in years. This place, this life they were building together, it was more than he had dared to hope for. "Zara," he said quietly, "I want to ask you something important." She turned to look at him, her amber eyes curious. "What is it?" He took her hands in his heart suddenly pounding. "We have built a home together. We work together, live together, face the world's judgment together, but I want to make it official. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours for all our lives." He swallowed hard. "Will you marry me, Zara Oakenshield? Will you be my wife?" Her eyes widened, and for a heart-stopping moment he thought she might refuse. Then tears spilled down her green cheeks and she was nodding frantically. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Nathaniel, I will marry you. I will be your wife and you will be my husband, and we will face whatever comes together." He kissed her then, long and deep, pouring all his love and hope into the gesture. When they finally parted, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. "We will need to find someone willing to perform the ceremony," Zara said practically, though her smile did not fade. "That may be difficult. Then we will search until we find someone. I will not let prejudice stop me from making you my bride." As it turned out, Marcus the innkeeper had a suggestion. There was a traveling priest named Father Benedict who made rounds through the smaller settlements, offering services to those who could not easily reach the great temples. He was known to be a man of principle who believed in judging people by their character rather than their heritage. "He will be in Millbrook in 3 weeks," Marcus told them. "I can speak to him if you like, see if he would be willing to perform a marriage between a human and an orc." "We would be grateful," Nathaniel said. True to his word, Marcus arranged a meeting. Father Benedict turned out to be a thin, elderly man with kind eyes and hands gnarled by arthritis. He listened carefully as Nathaniel and Zara explained their situation and their request. "The scriptures do not forbid unions between different peoples," he said at last. "There are those who would cite tradition or custom, but I have learned that tradition is often simply prejudice dressed in respectable clothing." He looked at each of them in turn. "Do you love each other truly? Are you prepared to honor the vows of marriage?" "We are," they said in unison. "Then I see no reason to refuse. Love is rare enough in this world. We should celebrate it wherever it appears, not try to stamp it out because it makes us uncomfortable." He smiled. "I will perform your marriage ceremony, and gladly." The wedding took place on a bright October morning in the small clearing behind their homestead. Father Benedict officiated, with Marcus and Thomas standing as witnesses. Zara wore a simple dress of deep blue that she had sewn herself, and she had woven wildflowers into her black hair. Nathaniel wore his best shirt and trousers, cleaned and pressed with unusual care. As they stood facing each other, hands clasped, Nathaniel felt as though his heart might burst from his chest. Father Benedict's words washed over him the traditional vows about honor and faithfulness, about standing together through hardship and joy. When it came time to speak, his voice was steady. "Zara, you saved my life when you had no reason to help me. You showed me that courage and kindness exist even in a world that often seems devoid of both. I promise to love you, to stand beside you, to build a life with you that is worthy of the sacrifice you made when you chose mercy over hatred. You are my beloved, my partner, my home. I will be yours until my last breath." Tears streamed down Zara's face, but she was smiling. "Nathaniel, you looked at me and saw past the green skin and tusks to the person beneath. You chose love even when it would have been easier to choose fear. I promise to love you, to work beside you, to face whatever trials come with courage and hope. You are my beloved, my partner, my home. I will be yours until my last breath." Father Benedict pronounced them husband and wife, and when Nathaniel kissed his bride, Marcus and Thomas cheered. It was a small celebration, intimate and perfect. They shared a simple meal afterward, and Thomas presented them with a bottle of wine he had been saving for a special occasion. "To Nathaniel and Zara Grayson," Thomas toasted, raising his cup. "May they have many happy years together." "To many happy years," Marcus echoed. As the sun set on their wedding day, Nathaniel and Zara stood together in the doorway of their home, truly their home now, in every sense. The house was modest and the fields would require years of hard work, but it was theirs, built by their own hands and blessed by their love. "Are you nervous?" Zara asked quietly, her hand in his. "Terrified," Nathaniel admitted with a laugh, "but in a good way. I feel like my whole life has been leading to this moment." She squeezed his hand. Then let us not waste it. He lifted her easily into his arms. She was solid and strong, but so was he now, hardened by months of farm work. She laughed in surprise and wrapped her arms around his neck as he carried her over the threshold of their home. Inside, a fire burned in the hearth, casting warm light across the simple furniture they had made together. Nathaniel set her down gently, and they stood for a moment simply looking at each other. Her amber eyes seemed to glow in the firelight, full of love and trust, and just a hint of nervousness that matched his own. "I have never done this before," Zara said softly. "I do not know if I will do it right." "Neither have I," Nathaniel assured her, "but I think we will figure it out together." He led her to the bedroom, where the bed they had built stood sturdy and solid. Someone, probably Marcus, had left fresh linens and a small vase of late-season flowers on the bedside table. The thoughtfulness of the gesture made Nathaniel's throat tight. Zara turned to face him, reaching up to cup his cheek with one strong hand. "I love you, Nathaniel Grayson, my husband." "I love you, Zara Grayson, my wife." He kissed her softly, then with growing passion as she responded. Her hands found the buttons of his shirt and his fingers worked at the laces of her dress. They undressed each other slowly, neither rushing, taking time to simply look and appreciate. In the warm glow of the bedroom candles, Nathaniel traced the green skin of her shoulders, the powerful muscles of her arms, the curves of her body. She was beautiful in a way that took his breath away, strong and fierce, and entirely herself. Zara's hands explored him in turn, her touch gentle despite her strength. "You are certain," she whispered. "Once we do this, there is no going back. We will be truly bound together." "I have never been more certain of anything," he replied. He lowered her gently onto the bedroll, and the orc bride whispered, "I am ready." They came together with a mixture of tenderness and passion, learning each other's bodies and preferences through whispered communication and patient exploration. There was awkwardness at first, inevitable when two people who had never known intimacy attempted to navigate it together. But there was also laughter and wonder, and an overwhelming sense of rightness. Afterward, they lay tangled together beneath the quilts, Zara's head resting on Nathaniel's chest while he stroked her hair. The fire in the main room had died down to embers, but they were warm enough in each other's arms. "That was worth waiting for," Zara murmured sleepily. Nathaniel laughed softly. "It was better than anything I imagined. You are better than anything I imagined. We are going to be all right, are we not?" she asked. "Despite everything trying to keep us apart, we are going to build a good life here." "We are already building it," he assured her. "Every day we wake up together, every meal we share, every field we plant, it is all part of the life we are making. And yes, we are going to be all right, better than all right. We are going to be happy." She lifted her head to kiss him softly. "Happy," she repeated as though testing the word. "I like the sound of that." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, two people who had been lost and alone now found and together. Outside, the autumn wind whispered through the wheat fields, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called to its mate. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, uncaring of the small miracle that had occurred in a modest homestead in the borderlands, the miracle of two different people choosing love over fear, hope over hatred, and building something beautiful in the process. The winter that followed was hard but manageable. Nathaniel and Zara worked side by side to weatherproof their home, stockpile firewood, and ensure they had enough supplies to last until spring. They visited Millbrook once a week for necessities and to maintain their connections to the community. Gradually, more people began to accept them. It helped that they were proving themselves to be good neighbors. Zara helped track down livestock that had wandered off, and Nathaniel assisted with repairs whenever someone needed an extra hand. Not everyone approved, of course. There were still those who muttered darkly about unnatural unions and the corruption of proper society. But the objections grew quieter as the months passed, and it became clear that Nathaniel and Zara were simply two people trying to live peaceful, productive lives. In February, during a particularly brutal cold snap, an ice storm struck the region. Several of the older buildings in Millbrook suffered damage, and one family lost their barn entirely when the roof collapsed under the weight of the ice. Nathaniel and Zara were among the first to volunteer their help with rebuilding efforts. They worked alongside their neighbors for 2 solid weeks, clearing debris and constructing a new barn. By the end of it, even the most stubborn skeptics had to admit that the orc woman and her human husband were valuable members of the community. Spring came as a relief, bringing warmer weather and the promise of new growth. Nathaniel and Zara planted their fields with a mixture of wheat, barley, and vegetables. Zara also started a small herb garden near the house, growing medicinal plants she had learned about from her clan's healers. "We should get some chickens," she suggested one morning as they surveyed their work. "And maybe a goat for milk." "And a dog," Nathaniel added. "Every proper farm needs a dog." They acquired all 3 over the following weeks: a dozen chickens, a sweet-tempered goat named Clover, and a gangly farm dog of indeterminate breed that they named Scout. The animals added life and character to the homestead, and Nathaniel found himself smiling more often as he went about his daily work. One warm afternoon in May, Zara came running in from the fields, her face alight with excitement. "Nathaniel, come quickly." Alarmed, he dropped the board he was measuring and hurried after her. She led him to the far corner of their largest field, where she pointed to the ground. There, pushing up through the dark soil, were neat rows of bright green shoots. "The wheat," he breathed. "It is coming up." "Our first real crop," Zara said, gripping his hand tightly. "We did this, Nathaniel. We actually did this." He pulled her into a fierce hug, overwhelmed with emotion. They had taken an abandoned piece of land and brought it back to life through their own hard work. It was tangible proof that they could succeed, that their life together was not just a dream but a growing reality. As summer progressed, the crops flourished. Nathaniel and Zara fell into comfortable rhythms, working hard during the day and spending their evenings together on the porch, talking and planning for the future. They spoke about expanding their fields next year, about maybe adding a second room to the house, about all the small and large dreams that filled their hearts. In July, Zara made an announcement that changed everything. They were sitting at dinner when she set down her spoon and looked at him with an expression that was equal parts nervous and elated. "Nathaniel, I need to tell you something. I have been feeling strange for the past few weeks, tired, nauseous in the mornings. I thought perhaps I was getting sick, but then I realized I had missed my monthly bleeding, twice now." It took him a moment to understand what she was saying. When comprehension dawned, his eyes went wide. "You mean I am with child," Zara confirmed, her voice shaking slightly. "We are going to have a baby." Nathaniel stood so abruptly that his chair fell over backward. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, lifting her right off her feet. "A baby," he repeated, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to have a baby." Zara clung to him, her own laughter mixing with tears. "I was afraid you might not be ready. I know we have not even been married a year and there is still so much work to do, ready or not. This is the most wonderful news I have ever received," he said firmly. He set her down carefully, suddenly conscious of her condition. "We need to make sure you are well cared for. Maybe Father Benedict knows of a midwife, and we should tell Thomas and Marcus. They will want to know." Slow down, Zara said, smiling through her tears. We have months yet before the baby comes. Probably late winter or early spring if I am calculating correctly. That night, they lay in bed discussing names and making plans. Nathaniel rested his hand on Zara's stomach, which showed no sign yet of the life growing within. Do you think the child will be more human or more orc? Zara asked quietly. I think the child will be ours, Nathaniel replied. And that is all that matters. Human, orc, or something in between, we will love them completely. The world will not be kind to a half-breed, Zara said, voicing the fear that they both felt. They will belong fully to neither of our peoples. Then we will teach them to be proud of both their heritages, Nathaniel said. We will raise them to be strong and kind, to judge people by their actions rather than their ancestry, and we will love them so fiercely that they will never doubt their worth. Zara turned to face him, her eyes searching his. You are a good man, Nathaniel Grayson. Our child is lucky to have you as a father. Our child is lucky to have you as a mother, he countered. You are the strongest, bravest person I know. As summer turned to autumn, Zara's pregnancy became more visible. Some in Millbrook were scandalized by the idea of a human orc child, but others were cautiously supportive. Thomas's wife, Martha, took Zara under her wing, offering advice and hand-me-down baby clothes from their own grown children. Marcus grumbled that he supposed he would have to keep a high chair at the inn for when they visited with the baby. The harvest that autumn was abundant, yielding enough wheat and barley to pay their dues to Lord Pemberton, and still have plenty left to sell or store. Nathaniel worked with fierce determination to ensure everything was secured before winter, knowing that Zara would need to rest more as her pregnancy advanced. By December, Zara's belly was round and prominent. She moved more slowly now, and Nathaniel took on more of the heavy work without complaint. He cherished these months of anticipation, watching his wife grow with their child and dreaming about the future. On a cold night in late January, Zara woke him with a hand on his shoulder. Nathaniel, she said calmly, though her face was tight with pain. The baby is coming. He was up in an instant, his heart racing. They had prepared for this moment. The midwife, a capable woman named Helen, lived only 2 miles away. Nathaniel ran through the snow to fetch her, his breath coming in white clouds in the freezing air. Helen arrived quickly, taking charge with the confidence of someone who had delivered hundreds of babies. She sent Nathaniel to boil water and gather clean cloths, keeping him busy while she examined Zara. The labor lasted through the night and into the following morning. Nathaniel stayed by Zara's side, holding her hand and offering what comfort he could. She was incredibly strong, working through the contractions with gritted determination, and only occasional cries of pain. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, a new sound filled the house, the thin, powerful wail of a newborn. Helen wrapped the baby quickly and placed them in Zara's arms. A daughter, she announced, smiling. Small but healthy. She has good lungs, that is certain. Nathaniel looked down at his daughter and felt his entire world shift. She was tiny and perfect, with skin that was a pale green lighter than Zara's but definitely not human in tone. She had a small button nose, delicate pointed ears, and when she yawned, he could see the tiniest hint of tusks beginning to form in her gums. Her eyes, when they fluttered open, were a startling blue. She is beautiful, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She is ours, Zara said, tears streaming down her exhausted face. Our daughter. Have you chosen a name? Helen asked as she tidied up. Nathaniel and Zara looked at each other and Zara nodded. Nora, she said. Her name is Nora Grayson. A good, strong name, Helen approved. Welcome to the world, little Nora. The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting but filled with joy. Nora proved to be a healthy, hungry baby who kept her parents busy at all hours. Nathaniel discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed, walking the floor with his crying daughter at 3 in the morning, while Zara caught a few precious hours of sleep. Word of the birth spread through Millbrook, and reactions were mixed. Some people sent small gifts or kind words. Others kept their distance, uncomfortable with the reality of a half-orc child in their midst. Nathaniel and Zara ignored the negativity, focusing entirely on their daughter and their little family. As winter gave way to spring, Nora grew rapidly. By 3 months, she was smiling and cooing at her parents. By 6 months, she was sitting up on her own and showing signs of the same determination that characterized both her mother and father. Her coloring remained a pale green, and her ears were distinctly pointed, but her features were a blend of both parents in a way that was uniquely beautiful. One warm afternoon in May, when Nora was about 4 months old, Nathaniel was working in the garden while Zara sat on a blanket in the shade with the baby. He looked up to find a group of riders approaching down the road, 5 men on horseback, armed and wearing the livery of Kelthira. His blood ran cold. Bounty hunters. "Zara," he said quietly, trying to keep the panic from his voice. "Take Nora and go inside, now." She looked up, saw the riders, and gathered their daughter immediately. But before she could reach the house, the riders had dismounted and spread out, blocking her path. "Nathaniel Grayson," the leader said, his voice carrying across the yard. He was a scarred man with cold eyes. "You are wanted in Kelthira for desertion and cowardice. We have come to bring you back for trial." "I am in Valmer now," Nathaniel said, moving to stand between the men and his family. "Your authority does not extend here." "We have permission from Lord Pemberton to make this arrest," the man countered. Seems the bounty was enough to make him forget his protective instincts toward his tenants. He smiled unpleasantly. "Come quietly, and the orc and her half-breed brat do not have to get hurt." Rage flooded through Nathaniel, but he forced himself to remain calm. "If I go with you, you will leave my family alone. You swear it." "Nathaniel, no," Zara cried out, but he held up a hand. "I want his word," Nathaniel said, his eyes locked on the leader. The bounty hunter shrugged. "Sure, we are here for you, not them. Come peacefully and we ride out immediately." Nathaniel looked at Zara, trying to memorize her face, the precious bundle in her arms. "I love you," he said. "Both of you, I am sorry." "There must be another way," Zara said desperately, but he could see in her eyes that she knew there was not. If he fought, people would die, maybe, including her or Nora. He turned back to the bounty hunters. "I will come with you. Just let me say goodbye properly." The leader nodded, and Nathaniel crossed to his wife. He embraced her carefully, mindful of the baby between them, and kissed her deeply. "Run if you can," he whispered against her lips. "Take Nora somewhere safe. Do not try to save me, just keep our daughter safe." "I will find a way," Zara whispered back. "I swear it, I will not let them take you." Before he could respond, rough hands grabbed his arms and pulled him away. They bound his wrists with rope and hauled him toward a horse. Nathaniel looked back one last time to see Zara standing in their yard, tears streaming down her face, their daughter wailing in her arms. Then the bounty hunters kicked their horses into motion, and his family disappeared from view. They traveled for 2 days, pushing hard toward the Kelthira border. The bounty hunters treated Nathaniel roughly but not cruelly, apparently content to simply deliver him alive. They camped the second night in a clearing beside a stream, binding Nathaniel to a tree while they ate and talked among themselves. He was trying to work the ropes loose when he heard a sound in the woods, a barely audible rustle of leaves. The bounty hunters heard nothing, occupied with their meal and their speculation about how they would spend their reward money. Then Zara stepped into the firelight, her bow drawn, an arrow nocked and aimed at the leader's heart. "Release my husband," she said calmly. "Now." The bounty hunters scrambled for their weapons, but 3 more arrows flew from the darkness beyond the fire, and 3 men cried out as they were struck in non-lethal but disabling spots: shoulders, thighs. The remaining 2 froze. "I said release him," Zara repeated. "I am an excellent shot, and I have friends in these woods who are equally skilled. You are outnumbered and outmatched. Walk away now and you live. Refuse and you will not see another sunrise." The leader looked at his wounded companions, then at Zara's unwavering aim. Slowly he raised his hands. "All right, you win, but this is not over. The bounty still stands. Then you had best warn your fellow hunters that taking it will cost them their lives," Zara said. She jerked her head toward Nathaniel. "Cut him loose." One of the uninjured men approached Nathaniel with a knife and sawed through his bonds. The moment he was free, Nathaniel ran to Zara's side. She did not lower her bow. "Mount up," she ordered the bounty hunters. "Take your wounded and go. If I see any of you again, I will not be merciful a second time." The men obeyed, clumsily helping their injured companions onto horses and riding off into the night. When they were gone, figures emerged from the forest: Thomas, Marcus, and 2 other men from Millbrook, all armed with bows. "I thought you might need some help," Thomas said gruffly. "Martha is watching Nora, by the way. She is fine." "You came all this way to rescue me?" Nathaniel asked, overwhelmed. "You are our neighbors," Marcus said simply. "Our friends. We were not about to let you be dragged away for a crime everyone knows you did not commit." Zara finally lowered her bow, and Nathaniel pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You came for me," he said, his voice breaking. "You risked everything to come for me." "Of course I did," she replied. "We are partners, remember. That means I do not leave you behind." She pulled back to look at him seriously. "But Nathaniel, we cannot go back to the homestead. Not now. They know where we live. Others will come." "Then we will go somewhere else," he said firmly. "Somewhere far enough away that Kulthara's reach does not extend. We will start over if we have to." "There are lands west of here," Thomas offered. "New territories being settled. They care more about willing workers than old warrants. I have a cousin there who could help you get established." "We will take any help we can get," Nathaniel said gratefully. They traveled through the night, putting as much distance between themselves and the bounty hunters as possible. By morning, they had reached Millbrook, where Martha waited with Nora. The baby had cried herself to sleep in the older woman's arms, exhausted from missing her parents. Zara took her daughter and held her close, tears of relief streaming down her face. "I am sorry, little one. I am so sorry, but we are together now. We are all together." They spent 2 days in Millbrook preparing for their journey west, selling what they could not carry and saying goodbye to the few people who had become friends. Thomas gave them detailed directions to his cousin's settlement and a letter of introduction. Marcus provided supplies and refused payment. "You have given us more than we could ever repay," Nathaniel protested. "Then pay it forward someday," Marcus said gruffly. "Help someone else who needs it, and we will call it even." On a gray morning in late May, Nathaniel and Zara set out west with their infant daughter, a pack horse carrying their possessions, and hope for a new beginning. The journey would take weeks, perhaps months, but they faced it together. As they crested the first hill and Millbrook disappeared behind them, Zara reached over and took Nathaniel's hand. "No matter how far we have to go, no matter what we face, we will be all right," she said with quiet confidence. "Because we have each other and we have Nora, and that is enough to overcome anything." "More than enough," Nathaniel agreed. "Together we are unstoppable." They traveled west for 6 weeks, following Thomas's directions and the course of the great river that wound through the frontier territories. The journey was challenging with an infant, but Nora proved to be a resilient traveler, and they made steady progress. They passed through small settlements and wilderness, always moving forward, always looking toward the future. Finally, in mid-July, they reached the settlement of Riverside, a growing community on the banks of the great river where Thomas's cousin lived. Peter Hendricks was a younger man than Thomas, but shared his practical outlook and fair-minded nature. When Nathaniel and Zara presented Thomas's letter, Peter welcomed them warmly. "Any friends of my cousin are friends of mine," he said. "We can always use good workers here, and we do not much care about a person's past as long as they are willing to work hard and treat others fairly." He helped them stake a claim on a piece of unclaimed land about 2 miles from the main settlement, a plot with good soil, a small creek running through it, and a view of the river in the distance. It would need to be cleared and built upon, but it had potential. "Start fresh," Peter advised. "Build your home, work your land, raise your daughter. That is all any of us can do," and so they did. Through the remainder of the summer and into the fall, Nathaniel and Zara worked to establish their new homestead. They built a sturdy cabin, cleared fields, and planted a late crop of vegetables. Nora grew and thrived, her laughter filling their small home with joy. The people of Riverside proved to be more accepting than those in Millbrook had been initially. Perhaps it was because the frontier attracted those who were running from something or seeking a new start. Perhaps it was simply that survival in such a place required cooperation more than judgment. Whatever the reason, Nathaniel and Zara found themselves welcomed into the community. By the time winter arrived, they had a snug cabin, a full storehouse, and a place in the social fabric of Riverside. Nora was nearly a year old, crawling everywhere and getting into everything, a constant source of wonder and exhaustion for her parents. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Nathaniel and Zara stood together on the porch of their new home, looking out over the land they had claimed and the life they were building. "We have come a long way from that creek bed where you found me," Nathaniel said, wrapping his arms around his wife from behind. "We have come exactly where we were meant to be," Zara replied, leaning back against him. "All the pain and struggle and fear led us here to this place, to this life." "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing me, giving up your solitude, accepting all the hardship that came with it?" She turned in his arms to face him, her amber eyes fierce and bright. "Never. Not for a single moment. You are my husband, my partner, my love. You and Nora are my family. That is worth any price." He kissed her softly, deeply, pouring all his love into the gesture. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Zara Grayson, today, tomorrow, and always. And I love you, Nathaniel Grayson. Today, tomorrow, and always." Inside the cabin, Nora began to fuss, wanting her parents' attention. They laughed and went inside together, ready to face whatever came next as a family. The years that followed were not without challenges. There were hard winters and failed crops, illnesses and accidents, moments of fear and uncertainty. But there was also joy and growth and a deepening love that sustained them through everything. Nora grew into a bright, energetic child who inherited her mother's strength and her father's kindness. Her mixed heritage made her unique in Riverside, but she was accepted by the other children and loved by the community. Nathaniel and Zara taught her to be proud of both her human and orc blood, to see her differences as strengths rather than weaknesses. When Nora was 3, Zara gave birth to a son they named Nathan, after his father. 2 years later, a second daughter arrived, whom they named Grace. Each child was a little different in appearance, blending their parents' features in unique ways, but all were healthy and happy. The homestead expanded over the years. They built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, added a proper barn and several outbuildings, and cleared more land for crops. Nathaniel proved to be as capable a farmer as his father had been, and Zara's hunting skills kept them supplied with meat and valuable furs to trade. More importantly, they became pillars of the riverside community. Nathaniel served on the settlement council, helping to mediate disputes and plan for the community's growth. Zara taught the young people of Riverside to hunt and track, sharing knowledge that had been passed down through generations of her clan. Together, they demonstrated that love and commitment could transcend the boundaries of race and prejudice. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Peter Hendricks organized a celebration at the community gathering hall. Nearly everyone in Riverside attended, bringing food and gifts and well wishes. As Nathaniel stood before the assembled crowd with Zara at his side and their 3 children gathered around them, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. 10 years ago, I was a fugitive with no hope and no future, he said, his voice carrying through the hall. Then this remarkable woman found me bleeding in a creek and decided to save my life, even though every lesson of her upbringing told her I was the enemy. That single act of compassion changed everything. It gave me hope when I had none. It showed me that love is stronger than hatred, that kindness is more powerful than prejudice. He turned to Zara, taking her hands in his. You are the bravest, strongest, most incredible person I have ever known. You gave up your clan for a stranger child. You gave up your safety to rescue me from bounty hunters. You have built this life with me through strength and determination and unwavering love. Every day I wake up grateful that you chose me, that you continue to choose me. Zara's eyes were bright with tears. And I wake up every day grateful that you saw past my green skin and tusks to the person underneath. That you loved me not despite what I am, but because of all that I am. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You showed me that it is possible to build something beautiful out of pain and loss. They kissed to thunderous applause from the gathered crowd, and then their children rushed forward to join the embrace, creating a tangle of arms and laughter and love. As the celebration continued around them, friends eating and dancing and making, merry Nathaniel held his family close and reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate flight through the forest to this moment of joy and community, every step had been worth it. Every struggle had forged them stronger. Every challenge had deepened their bond. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Nathaniel and Zara sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. The summer air was warm and sweet, filled with the sound of crickets and the distant rush of the river. You remember the night you asked me to marry you? Zara asked softly. You said we would face whatever came together, and that we would prove love was stronger than hatred. I remember, Nathaniel confirmed. I think we did it, she said, wonder in her voice. I think we actually did it. We built a life, raised a family, became part of a community. We took all the ugliness and prejudice the world threw at us and we transformed it into something good and true. We did it together, Nathaniel corrected gently. Every step of the way together. She leaned her head on his shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. They sat in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds and built something that would last. Inside the house, one of the children called out in sleep, and Zara rose to check on them. Nathaniel watched her go, his heart full to bursting with love for this woman who had saved him in every way a person could be saved. When she returned and settled back beside him, he took her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For everything. For saving my life that day in the creek. For seeing something worth loving in a broken soldier with nothing to offer. For building this beautiful life with me. For our children. For every morning I wake up beside you, and every night I fall asleep in your arms. Thank you for all of it. Zara smiled, that slow, soft smile that was reserved only for him. You do not need to thank me for loving you, Nathaniel. That is the easiest thing I have ever done. They remained on the porch until the stars filled the sky, talking quietly about their plans for the next harvest, about Nora's progress in learning to read, about whether Nathan would inherit his mother's archery skills or his father's affinity for growing things. They spoke of small concerns and large dreams, of the mundane and the profound, secure in the knowledge that whatever came, they would face it as they always had together. As the moon rose over the river and painted the world in silver light, Nathaniel reflected that this was what true victory looked like. Not glory on a battlefield or wealth or fame, but a quiet homestead filled with love, healthy children sleeping safely in their beds, and a partner whose hand fit perfectly in his own. He had lost everything once: his family, his home, his reputation, his freedom. But in losing it all, he had found something infinitely more precious. He had found Zara. He had found love. He had found home. And that, he knew, was worth more than all the kingdoms in the world. Years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations, challenges and triumphs. Nora grew into a strong young woman who combined her mother's physical prowess with her father's diplomatic skills. Nathan proved to be a gifted farmer with an almost supernatural ability to coax life from difficult soil. Grace, the youngest, inherited both her parents' stubborn determination and developed a talent for healing that made her invaluable to the community. Other families began to arrive in Riverside, some fleeing prejudice elsewhere, some simply seeking opportunity. Among them were a handful of other mixed couples and families, drawn by stories of a place where such unions were accepted. Nathaniel and Zara found themselves becoming advocates and mentors for these families, offering advice and support drawn from their own experiences. The homestead became a gathering place, known for its hospitality and the warmth of its inhabitants. On summer evenings, it was not uncommon to find a dozen people on the porch or in the yard, sharing meals and stories and laughter. Zara's venison stew became legendary throughout the region, and Nathaniel's skill at settling disputes earned him respect that transcended his past. On their 20th wedding anniversary, their children surprised them with a party that brought together friends from across the frontier territories. Thomas made the long journey from Millbrook with his wife. Marcus sent a letter and a generous gift. And Peter Hendricks gave a speech about how Nathaniel and Zara had helped build Riverside into the thriving community it had become. But the most touching moment came when Father Benedict, now elderly and frail, but still traveling his circuit, stood to speak. He had performed marriages for several of the other mixed couples in the region, and he credited Nathaniel and Zara with showing him what was possible when love was allowed to transcend artificial boundaries. 20 years ago, I performed a marriage ceremony in a small clearing, he said, his voice thin but strong with conviction. I joined together a human man and an orc woman who loved each other against all reason and expectation. Some said it would not last. Some said it was unnatural, doomed to fail. But I am here today to tell you that what I witnessed 20 years ago was not unnatural. It was the most natural thing in the world, two people choosing love in a world that tried to teach them hatred. He gestured to Nathaniel and Zara, who stood together with clasped hands. These two have built not just a family, but a legacy. They have shown us all that the divisions we create between peoples are false, that the prejudices we inherit are lies. They have proven that courage and love can change the world, one small corner at a time. The applause that followed was thunderous, and Nathaniel found himself unable to speak through the emotion that clogged his throat. Zara squeezed his hand tightly, her own eyes bright with tears. When the party finally wound down and the last guests had departed, Nathaniel and Zara walked together to the small creek that ran through their property, a deliberate echo of that first creek where she had saved him so many years ago. 20 years, Nathaniel said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. We have built something remarkable, Zara said, watching the moonlight dance on the water. Not just for ourselves, but for our children and their children after them. This place, this community, it will outlast us, and the love that created it will continue to inspire others long after we are gone. Nathaniel pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her wood smoke and herbs and something uniquely Zara. When I was bleeding out in that creek, I thought my story was ending. I never imagined it was really just beginning. Our story, Zara corrected softly. It was always meant to be our story, Nathaniel. From the moment I pulled you from that water, our fates were intertwined. And I would not change a single moment of it, not even the painful ones, because they all led us here. They stood in the gentle darkness, two people who had defied the world's expectations and created something beautiful in the process. Behind them, their home glowed with warm light, filled with the evidence of their loved children and grandchildren, friends and community. Years of memories and dreams still to be fulfilled. And as they turned to walk back to that home together, Nathaniel knew with absolute certainty that he was the luckiest man alive. Not because his life had been easy, it had not. Not because he had avoided pain or loss, he had experienced plenty of both. But because he had been given the gift of Zara's love, and together they had transformed that love into something that would echo through generations. He lowered his lips to hers for a kiss that was both familiar and still exciting after 20 years, and she responded with the same passion and tenderness that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. "I love you," he whispered against her mouth. "Today, tomorrow, and always." "And I love you," she replied. "My husband, my partner, my heart. Today, tomorrow, and always." They walked back to their home hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held, secure in the knowledge that together they could overcome anything. Their story, a story that began with a desperate rescue and grew into a legacy of love, would continue to unfold with each passing day, a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and commitment. And in the years to come, when their grandchildren asked how it all began, Nathaniel and Zara would sit together and tell the tale. They would speak of a creek in the forest, an arrow through the shoulder, and an orc woman who chose mercy over hatred. They would describe building a life from nothing, fighting for a future others said was impossible, and learning that love was not bound by the color of one's skin or the shape of one's ears. But mostly they would tell of choosing each other, again and again, through every trial and triumph, every joy and sorrow, every ordinary day and extraordinary moment. Because that was the real story, not one dramatic rescue or single grand gesture, but thousands of small choices made over decades, all adding up to a love that changed the world. Their story proved that even in the darkest times, hope could flourish. That even when the world insisted on division, individuals could choose unity. That love, given freely and nurtured carefully, could indeed conquer all. And so they lived, loved, and built their legacy together. Two souls united across every boundary, their happiness a beacon for all who came after. The prejudices and hatred that had once seemed insurmountable faded into memory, replaced by the living proof that a human and an orc could not only coexist, but thrive together, creating beauty and meaning from circumstances that might have destroyed others. In the end, their story was simple and profound, extraordinary and deeply ordinary all at once. It was a story of love, and there could be no greater tale to tell.